We'll move over Twitter and Facebook. There's a new social media sheriff in town, and its name is Parler. It appeals to right-wingers who say it's the world's premier free speech platform because it doesn't censor or flag anything, as in disinformation over election fraud. It's been building a following for a while, but right after the election, the social media site Parler took flight.
More than doubling its downloads from 4.5 million users to now more than 10 million.
When Facebook and Twitter started to flag disinformation about candidates and the election and censoring groups like Stop the Steal and their unfounded claims of voter fraud, conservatives started to flock to Parler.
A new app called Parler has become a hit with conservatives who called the social media platform a refuge for free speech.
The site has also gotten a boost from media personalities like Westwood One's Mark Levin, Fox's Laura Ingraham, and the ever-inching towards the edge of complete wackydom, Fox business personality Maria Bartiromo.
I will no longer accept the censorship that is happening on Twitter, and I will be leaving soon and going to Parler.
And while she hasn't left Twitter yet, she has been boosting Parler and its CEO, John Matz.
And I think people are really just fed up with what's going on Twitter and Facebook.
But Matz has acknowledged that Parler is not beyond some censorship.
Parler's CEO saying there needs to be some limits after pornographic images were posted on the platform.
Meanwhile, some media observers say Parler is bound to fail, since conservatives thrive on sites like Twitter, where there's a shouting match, not an echo chamber. Yeah, Dan Lothian, I don't know about this. They want to fight with people. They're not going to just say, yeah, you're right, and yeah, you're right, and I agree, and what are we going to do? It's, no.
No, you're right. And there are a couple of people who I interact with on Facebook who were saying goodbye, and I didn't know where they were going. And then they pointed out they were going over to Parler. I think any other time, so if this were happening, let's say 5 years ago, I'd have less of a worry about it because I think, you can have a lot of people in an echo chamber saying whatever made up things they want to say, but you always had this sense that people really didn't buy into it and they didn't believe it. And what we're seeing in society today is that all this stuff that's made up, people really do believe this information and they're acting on it. And so that concerns me a little bit. But yeah, I think this is mostly a fad for now. In fact, some of those who have said that they were leaving actually are still very active on Twitter because it gets boring. If everyone agrees with you, then really who can you criticize? And so I see them toggling back and forth until they get tired of Parler.
Yeah, these guys are really funny. I love the way they tout as their marquee attraction is that they don't censor. They don't edit. They don't flag anything. They don't act as gatekeepers, which would be like a diner here in the COVID era, advertising, come on in. We don't wear masks. We don't wash our hands. And everyone has a cold back in the kitchen. Yay, it sounds delish. So that's nutty. And then, of course, they turn around and say, well, okay, we'll have to take off pornographic images. Well, wait a minute. What happened to pornographers' rights of free speech? So it's a bunch of nonsense. And this site will sooner or later, probably sooner, prove the adage that I've insisted since day one applies to the entirety of the Internet. You get what you put into it. Garbage in, garbage out.
One of the ironies here is that conservatives like to mock people on the left for being delicate snowflakes who need safe spaces where they're not going to, hear things that they don't want to hear that might upset them. And this is exactly what Parler is, right? It's a safe space online for conservatives. And I think that's another reason that it's probably not going to work in the long run. We already mentioned the fact that, the shouting is a big part of the appeal for some people on social media. But so much of conservatism over the past 4 years has been about cultivating this sense of victimhood, even though you're running the country. And that victimhood is based, to a really large extent around this idea that, I just want to speak freely and people are trampling on my free speech rights and not letting me say what I want to say, which is absurd because if you look at sites like Facebook, the top posts are all posts that you could imagine seeing on Parler in the next couple of years. If that sense of victimhood is not bolstered by Parler, if it is a place where they can just kind of hang out and be happy, I don't think conservatives are going to like it that much because it doesn't fit their worldview.
Well, I tried signing up for an account at Parler earlier today, and they wanted my cell phone number, and I thought, I don't think so. I'm still blind to Parler. You know, I agree with what everybody else has said. Let me add this. I have expressed on a number of occasions some discomfort at the idea of why the open web should be a total free speech zone, which it should be, while we expect platforms like Twitter and Facebook to moderate content and edit and get disinformation either labeled or out of the view of users. Well, here we can see what's happened. There is a real futility to trying to regulate speech in any way, because at some point, people who are tired of having their conspiracy theories labeled as conspiracy theories are going to pick up and go someplace else. And that's what we're starting to see with Parler and some of these other platforms like Me, I think it's called. And Newsmax has a social media platform as well. I agree that it may be that none of these are really going to catch on, but it shows you that you really can't engage in that kind of speech regulation and expect that people are just going to sit there and put up with it.
But that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do, right? I mean, if you imagine, let's say you're, the parent of one of the kids who were murdered at Sandy Hook. If you have people on Facebook or Twitter saying, yeah, you know what, check this person out. This is all a hoax, and their kid was a crisis actor and none of this happened. It doesn't really matter from my vantage point if those people will migrate somewhere else. If they're shut down, they should still be shut down. Every effort should be made to push that kind of stuff to the periphery because it's so toxic. And I feel like just a matter of principle, you got to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I agree.